It's so nice to have a heater, especially in the winter. This thing, it really comes in handy. Today, I want to talk about how much abuse, can a tungsten tip take? Because, as a kid, I got to the point where I wanted to get X10s and felt like X10s could be beneficial to me. I had this, wild idea that tungsten tips were this indestructible tip. You could ram it into anything, even though you're supposed to be pretty much keeping those arrows on the target because they are extremely expensive. But I had this notion, this idea in mind that these arrows were, these tips were super tough, that they would take a ton of abuse and last a really long time. So this is my experience with tungsten tips, and I left them in my jacket. Alright, so we have some tungsten tips here, and these are my damaged tips. These are the ones that maybe I started shooting X10s a little bit too early, and at the same point in time, my target is surrounded by rocks and other things and some trees behind it. So we're just going to take a look at my damage points, and then we're going to take it to a next level, so stay tuned. So now let's take a closer look at my damage tips here. I have, let me see if I can count, 6 of them. We'll bring it up. I don't know if you can see that quite well. We're going to take them out. Maybe not one by one, but some of the rougher looking ones. So our first tip here, it had a hard life. I believe this one ran into a tree, and it is hard to see because it is so small and my camera skills are only so good, but it definitely took some abuse. You can see the scrapes and stuff in it. So trees definitely do damage to your tungsten tips. What else does damage to your tungsten tips? Well, let's check out this next one because it is quite an eye-opener. So here is the second tip. Now this one met its fate on the rocks. And yes, it's again hard to see, but the tip is actually flat. So tungsten tips definitely don't take hitting rocks well. So at this point you're probably thinking, well, no duh, Anthony, you can't be, hitting rocks with your tungsten points, or you can't be hitting a tree with your tungsten points. That's not going to work. Well, that isn't totally the whole point of this video. I'm just trying to, put the word out there that if you're going to put all your money into buying a set of arrows, make sure you're, keeping them on the target, at least most of the time. Or you're shooting somewhere that the surface they're going to hit is a little more friendly. But even though you may be shooting on a field and your arrow could only get lost in the grass, if you don't find that arrow, well, this is very interesting what happens. So, this next tip we have here, this one was actually lost in my woods for only a couple months, honestly. And as you can see, hopefully, it's actually rusting. So, for those of you out there that think, oh, well, if I lose it in the woods, I can just go and find it like 6 months later. I would say within a year, depending on how much rainfall you have, you're probably not going to have a tip left that's worth trying to save. Like the arrow shaft might be alright, maybe. But the tip itself is going to be in terrible shape. Like, look at this thing. Yes, I might have missed the target beforehand on it. But anyway, it sat out there only for a couple months in the elements, and it is really, really beat up. So that pretty much wraps up my experience with tungsten points. What I learned is that I should have bought them maybe later in my archery career, or had a shooting environment where the conditions for missing weren't so brutal on the arrows. Of course, it really made you focus on not missing. Just some food for thought there. But now let's get into the really fun part of this video. These now 100 grain, originally 120 grain tungsten points that are so beat up, well, they are not useful to me anymore. So now I'm going to destroy them. So stick around and let's destroy some tungsten tips. Hopefully you enjoy the destruction of a, I don't know, 20-odd something dollar, like a $20 tip. Alright, so thank you everybody for making it to my garage here. Now, for the destruction part of this video, tungsten tip number 1 is going to meet its fate on the grinder. Nothing special, but it does grind things. So, I'm going to put on our safety goggles and, attempt to grind this point and see what kind of damage we can do to it. As a quick reminder, please don't try this at home. So, the grinder just eats the tungsten tips up. This thing got destroyed. Hopefully you enjoyed that. We're going to go move on to the next tip. A closer look on this thing first, though. So next up, we get to play with a little bit of fire. So this is going to be a whole lot of fun. Maybe not for the tungsten tip, but it's going to at least, entertain me. Alright, safety goggles on. Now, this is only like propane, so it may not actually do much to it, but we'll give it a try. Whoa, that's pretty wild, everybody. A glowing tungsten tip. Toasty! Huh. It's neat. What's it do when it hits the ground? Whoa, it cools off super fast. It is cold out here, but still. Now that was crazy. I have never heated up a point that long because it's like a 3-second rule thing here. So I didn't want to go too much further. I didn't want becoming molten or something. Technically, I guess it's. Anyway, I'm no materials expert, so I don't know what it would do if I kept heating it up. Then again, I guess the flame on the propane torch, I guess it's propane, only gets so hot, so it can only go so far. But that was really awesome. Now on to our final brutal test for these poor tungsten points. So this is the same tip that we heated up. So I'm thinking, let's go and smash it with a hammer and see what happens. But this hammer, I don't know if it's gonna do the job, honestly. So we're gonna step up our game, and we have a sledgehammer here. I don't know how many pounds this one is. This is an 8-pound sledgehammer. I think I have a 16 over there too. So we'll try the hammer first. If it makes it through the hammer, it meets the sledgehammer. And if it lives through this one, well, I got a heavier one, so let's give this a go. This is going to be awesome. So we have it all set up down here. We have the GoPro running. Got my safety goggles on. We're going to try it with just the hammer first. So let's go. No, it dented the metal plate that it was on. So now let's step this up a notch. So here is the 8-pound sledgehammer. And goodbye, tungsten point. Okay, so there's the plate. Yes, there's a huge dent and the hole from the tungsten point in it. Let's bring this up real close. It is actually the shape of the point, so that's pretty wild. Now, what? We taped it down, so we were able to get just the point back. Since we taped the tungsten point down to the piece of metal that we smashed, we were able to save the point. Somehow the stem of the point just got launched into outer space somewhere. I will never find that. But we do have the point, so we're gonna give you a nice close-up of that. This was the one that we set on fire, so it was nice to see that it didn't like shatter, like with the heat, you know, causing maybe some kind of structural problem. You know, this is not scientific at all here. So that wraps up this video on how much abuse can your tungsten tip take, and hopefully gave you some insight into, you know, should I buy or shouldn't I buy those tungsten tips. You know, if you're somebody that's not hitting the target consistently and you're thinking about getting X10s, maybe you should go with stainless steel, because at least the tip's going to take most of the damage before the shaft will. Hopefully you found that entertaining and informative. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, share it with your friends. I'd love to hear everybody's feedback on this in the comments section down below. And thank you for watching. Happy shooting.